Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. We had a bit of a hiatus last week. Because we had some rescheduling, but we're here this week to make up for it with a very rich session full of really interesting content. And I'm really excited to be back doing the live today. So as you know, I'm Jessie from Jan Clark Consulting. We've been doing this LinkedIn Live series this fall to talk about a variety of issues that are relevant to the nonprofit sector, and that have some kind of connection to government relations, granting, whatever that might be. I mean, it's been pretty loose because we really just want to bring value and have some really exciting conversations. And I think we've had a lot of those so far, but I'm really looking forward to today. I have someone with me today who actually has been my neighbor for, I think, more than 12 years now. We've lived on the same street. And so I especially appreciate that during the pandemic, we were able to have like water cooler chats from like the porch to the sidewalk, and still managed to have some kind of like sector connection and professional connection during that time. But yeah, we've been friends for a long time and had hosted play dates, et cetera, over the years.
You're aging us, Jessie. You're aging us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I do that. I'm very open about how old I am on here all the time. So, yes, and our kids are now, very, very old. So anyway, but I'm really excited to have Gord here because in addition to being my neighbor and having a lot of fun over the years, he's also done some really, really interesting work that I think he brings information and a perspective that I think remains unfortunately mostly very aspirational for a lot of people in the nonprofit sector, which is the idea of revenue diversification, bringing in impact investment, bringing in other kinds of finance to the table other than the perennial government grants. And I mean, you might wonder why we wanted to have a topic like this, but I think it's because we acknowledge that of course, organizations continue to rely on government grants. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. However, there are many challenges associated with that kind of dependence, first of all, because, as I tell people in my classes and tell other people, I mean, even, the time frame of politics is very, very, very tight, and things can change on a dime. You can have an election, you can have a funding cut. You never really know what's going to be happening. And of course, you want to build strategies to prepare for that within your government relationships, but you also just want to build strategies around that in general. But I think there's some other really interesting reasons as well, and Gord can get into those in a minute about why there's much more to benefit to organizations of revenue diversification. And I would actually venture to say as well, I think governments love it too because they like innovation, and they like that charities and nonprofits can sometimes be a bit more flexible and work in more innovative ways than they can, given the kind of regulatory framework they're up against. So, so Gord is here. He's here from his role where he's been, I believe, for 10 years now, which is amazing, at Lift Impact Partners, where they're doing some phenomenal work with a lot of really cool organizations from around Ontario, Toronto, I think largely. I don't know how national you are, but Gord, you can speak to that.
Across the country.
Across the country. Awesome. Okay, so all across the country, helping them really think through what does it mean to diversify revenue? What would work for your organization, within your organization's strategy and framework and values, and how can we create something for you that would be sustainable over the long term? So this is the work that he's been doing with Lyft for the past 10 years. And he's going to talk to us today about a number of topics, including why should you think about this topic? Why should you look into revenue diversification? And then if you are thinking about it, how do you go from just sort of thinking about it to like, what do you need to do in order to sort of start making this to a concrete discussion within your organization? And also then, he's going to share with us some exciting examples of some of the partners he's worked with over the years who've really seen, some really incredible results from taking this approach. And some of the innovative things that are out there as well. So he's going to talk us through those kinds of things. I think, the things you should be taking into consideration when making this kind of decision and approach, and talking about some of the benefits of diversifying your revenue and bringing in new revenue streams. So I'm excited because this is a topic, to me, it's one of the unicorn topics in the nonprofit sector where people love to, they have this beautiful imagining of what it could be, but have a very hard time often, I think, making it concrete. I don't think me who feels that way. And I think today is an opportunity to really make that conversation a bit more concrete. So Gord, over to you, just to introduce yourself and the topic, and then we can share some of the slides that you have in a few minutes as well.
Thanks, Jesse. Neighbor for 12 years. Yes, that's true. Lyft for not quite 10. It'll be 9 in May. It's great. But, the short bio is, I started my working career in industry, in manufacturing. And by my third year, I was like, oh my gosh, there has to be something more important than getting the product first on the shelf for Christmas. Shoot me now. At the time, I found corporate social responsibility, during my MBA, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds pretty cool. Okay, business for good." And that was the beginning that brought me into the charitable sector. And so I worked for 3 different not-for-profit organizations, employment and health, and was there for 7 or 8 years, and then made the jump, to the consultant side to Lyft, where I've been for the last almost 9 years, helping social purpose organizations, apply sort of an efficient and effective mindset so that they can serve more people. And it's the best job I've ever had. It's really been great.
And can you just tell us a bit about Lyft as well? So is Lyft a social enterprise? Is Lyft a nonprofit? What's your model, and how do you guys operate as well?
So Lyft is a national non-for-profit organization. We came out of the legacies out of the 2010 Vancouver Olympics, where we helped sport organizations have a bit of a social legacy instead of just the basic infrastructure. But essentially, for the last 10 years, we've been practicing a bit of a, we call it the Lyft approach rather than the model. It's a bit of venture philanthropy. So we come with consultant expertise, we come with a corporate partner network, and we bring that to bear on a really strategic, sets of problems that the organization's trying to solve. We generally like to work for 18, 24, 36 months with the organization, so that we're a trusted and valued partner, helping them, on the full set of their problems, right? So not just coming in on governance or leadership or finance. We like to work because they all sort of work together in the ecosystem. And lately, our projects have been working with ESTC on the federal side, IRCC, immigration. Those are 2 big, last 2 big projects for the last, 4 years or so.
Okay, well, that's interesting, and I want to know more about that aspect specifically as well. But maybe before we go down that path, maybe if you can start. I think one of the things I think that's really interesting is when organizations start thinking about why revenue. I mean, on the one hand, okay, of course, it seems like, oh well, this is a no-brainer. I mean, everybody wants to have more sources of revenue coming in. You want to make sure you're stable as an organization, able to keep delivering programs and services. What have you. But I think, there's a certain way as well that the sector has operated for a long time that's been really focused on, a few core sources of funding.
Yeah. And Jesse, some people, what you think or what we think is sort of, fairly obvious. I don't know if everybody thinks is obvious. Some organizations, have a long held view that, this is government's role to fund me. I'm a registered charity or a not-for-profit, and this is their role to fund service delivery in choose your industry, right? And they will always be there, right? And so it's fine to have that widely held view, but I think many would comment that even within that worldview, programs come in and out of favor, governments come in, government stripes come in and out of favor, and are you able to position yourself? So there are ebbs and flow even within that. And so the general, the big, phrase here is a bit of risk diversification, right? You want to minimize your risk here. And so if you have other pots of money besides government, you can ride those ebbs and flows a lot better, right? But I think, Jesse, we were talking just before we started, there's lots of other really interesting reasons why organizations, want to diversify. And so some of the things that we've heard are, in service delivery, you can come up with some really creative ideas, and government typically may or may not fund those. So there could be a whole reason for research and development that you've been doing on your own that you're not funded for, right? There's lots of unrestricted needs that organizations have that aren't funded. I mean, we can talk about the overhead number, shrinking over years, right? Like it costs your organization more, frankly, than what government's paying for you. If you had there's a big nod there. So there's some unrestricted dollars that can run to professional development or for your website or for outreach and marketing or all those things that are sort of four-letter words that aren't funded, inside the grant envelope, right? Because it costs a lot, to run an organization. So, I mean, those are just two, right? And then there's the continuity of having the safety to know that you can keep your staff and not be hinged by the program ends and this one start, right? You've got a bank of money, and that can ride you through those leaner times.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because there's already enough, I think, uncertainty in terms of the kind of work we do in the nonprofit sector, and being able to give a bit of assurance to people is such a incredible asset, I would say. And I think, I think your point also is well taken in terms of when organizations have innovative ideas they want to explore. I mean, say what you will, but certainly something that I'm very aware of is government is notoriously risk averse, and as a funder, right? And I mean for reasons that are valid, of course, but it's much harder for them to get into sometimes, out of the box things that are brand new. It's always, it can be a big struggle sometimes for government to find that kind of thing.
Yeah, and maybe you need we can speak in SPO, social purpose organizations, which you need 0.25 of someone to try something, right? And that money just isn't there, right? And so it's very good to have some unrestricted dollars, right? And so it takes a long time to get there, and it takes a long time to have that entrepreneurial mindset. But the March 31st conversation that is often difficult inside organizations, it can be a lot different if you start to think about diversifying your revenue streams and start to building out a bit of a different fund, that you could draw on in those times.
Okay, so say you've sold your organization on the idea for the reasons we've just been talking about, right? Or you've been asked to look further into it. How do you start? And what I'll do now is I can share some of the slides as well, and just talk about what you would advise, how you'd advise an organization who wants to get into this whole area, and where you should start.
Yeah. And recognizing, Jesse, that we've got 30 minutes for this conversation, we'll strip this down to to some basic ideas or some concepts. But what's on the screen here is the first thing is who are you as an organization, right? And you have to look at yourself and at your organization, and what's your risk culture, what skill sets do you have, what capabilities do you have, what's your strategy, where are you going? So there's a big and it's not that complicated, but it does require a bit of an honest conversation. And then you sort of look external in the marketplace, and this one's a little more objective, right? There are a range of different options out there, some of which we're very familiar with, granting, but there are other things that are newer, outcomes contracts, impact investing, social enterprise, those kinds of things. And then you've got to align the two. Well, listen, if I'm a risk averse culture, I'm not sure I'm going to launch a social enterprise, where there's a lot more risk there. Maybe I'm going to instead choose, if I'm largely been funded by the federal government, well, now maybe I'll look at the provincial government. And that is a form of diversification, right? So you start insulating yourselves from the cycle, right? And then, and then you sort of align the two, right? And so what are we good at? Where do we want to go? What do we have skills in? And what's the revenue stream that best matches who we are as an organization and where we're looking going forward? And it sounds simple, but it's actually difficult, because we get caught, as you said, in the day-to-day of doing what we do, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Lyft's sort of special sauce, and I would suggest that many people, the underpinning to this here is, I don't want to sound prescriptive or like this, but a solid measurement framework can really help you in revenue diversification. Can you meaningfully report on your outcomes? Yes, number served is important, number of the people that you reach, but how have the lives of the people that you served changed, right? Because that's a bit of the golden keys to unlocking different kinds of capital, right?
Which actually, it kind of makes me think, I've been part of different organizations that have had different conversations about the whole concept of ROI, and work with clients on that as well. And I mean, it's a tricky concept, I think, often to to really make concrete and maybe in the financial terms that certain people are looking for when it comes to the kind of longer term social change. But I've also seen people try and do it and have some interesting results as well. And I mean, is that something that you kind of take into consideration when you're thinking about the measurement framework as well?
It was more like this, Jesse, like who wants to buy your outcomes? I mean, to be very crass, right? And so you better be able to say, here are the outcomes that I get, and here's the evidence that I have those outcomes. Do you, government, federal, provincial, municipal, want to buy that? No. Okay. Which partners want to buy my outcomes and at what cost, right? And so, but if you're still in the, here are the numbers of people that we serve, we do great work game.
Yeah.
It's admirable, but there's a sort of the next level in order to get to where you want to go on the revenue side. That's the
absolutely. I'm just going to go on to the next slide, and maybe you can talk through us a bit about what this is referring to, and organizational characteristics that are successful for this kind of work.
Yeah. So this is this looking internally kind of framework, right? And like which consultant doesn't love a good framework? You can find others, I'm sure. But the basic idea is, look at our culture. What space are we playing in, and what skills do we have, right? I mean, those are the big conversations, right? And so, just to pick out a few things, on the capacity side, measurement and management is there, right? And so, do you have a measurement system in place? Are you able to report on your outcomes? It's Lyft's perspective, and I think many others. It's very important. And on the culture side, on the bottom left there, risk appetite comes back over and over and over again, right? And so, if you've largely been built on the backs of stable grant revenue, it is a shift from your board's perspective and from your staff's perspective. If all of your staff have been trained in social work and have come up through that stream, which is fantastic, right? There's a bit of a rub around selling stuff into the market, right? There is. And so that's a culture clash and a bit of a risk clash. And so it may be a much longer road to get to selling products and services than perhaps diversifying, right? So it causes the organization to kind of like hold up a mirror. I don't know the right metaphor, Jesse, but to think about who are we and what really fits with us, right? And it's okay that you don't have capacity because you can build it, but you should know what you're starting with, right? So I don't know if you've seen some of that, Jesse, in your, if someone who's largely played in the provincial space, do they see a big gap between their skill sets to apply on the federal side?
I mean, I think, in terms of like, looking at kind of what organizations have to offer, or in terms of looking internally at their own, so for me, there's a big evolution, I think, that happens in organizations, that to some extent, one of the things I find interesting is what you're describing around, wanting to really be able to speak in more in more in-depth terms, maybe longer term terms about the impact of your work, right? And it's interesting because I think sometimes the funders can drive that conversation in a way for some organizations if they're looking for that kind of information. But what you want to do is eventually you want to get to this point with your organization, and I think this is reflected in this framework as well, where you have the maturity where you're making your own, drawing your own conclusions about your impact, not tied to any particular funder. But tied to kind of the framework and measurement that you want to be doing and the impact you want to be having as an organization. And it can take a while to get there sometimes.
Yes, Jesse. And I don't know if you saw my eyes bug out there, because then you're actually, imagine this world. You go to your funder and you go, here are the outcomes that we can get. Do you want them? Rather than they're sort of listing their outcomes and you're turning yourself inside out to like, it's backwards, right?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Here's what we do. Here's our clarity of purpose. Here's our clarity of vision. And here's my measurement that tells me I'm get there. Do you want these outcomes? I mean, you can't tell me that they're not going to want meaningful employment, sense of belonging. I mean, I'm just going to throw out some big ones, for immigration or what have you. they are, right? Yeah, and on the credibility side, it just speaks to take this back, like, if you're an immigrant serving organization or a disability serving organization, it's unlikely that you're going to want to start selling like and competing an app, to sell tickets for concerts. I'm making something really crazy. It's just aligned, right?
Yeah.
But do you want to sell translation services, as an immigrant serving organization, or your interpretation services? Well, that's getting closer to where we are, right? And so that's legit, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think you're right. The alignment is such a key piece, because I think, I see that just in all kinds of different contexts in the nonprofit sector, in terms of, everybody to some extent has that shiny object syndrome, and you think, oh, we want to try the newest and latest thing. And, board members can be amazing, but they can definitely be guilty of that at times, from what I've seen. And I think also sometimes with funders.
Of another series, Jesse.
You're right.
Governance.
But I would say too, like, I think funders can sometimes cause you to chase that in different directions as well, right? And
they can, which is why it's so clear that you've got your let's throw theory of change or results chain. I mean, that backbone. What is the change in the world that we want to see? How are we going to get there? And the measurement pieces, because those will evolve, but those are linchpin for who you are, right? And then you can get your data over the years, which you can then start talking to the different people who want to fund you for it.
Exactly. No, exactly. And I think it's so powerful when you can, so I think it's interesting, because I think some of the things you're saying, are needed for this work are also just good, obviously, are good organizational practices, in general, right? And it's a way of being an ideal way, I think, of wanting your organization to be set up and managed, if possible. I'm just looking at time, and we have a few.
Yeah, we got to roll. Sure, let's go next. Yeah.
And I also want to hear some examples, because I know you have a few examples.
Yeah, so maybe we'll talk through these, and then we can roll into some examples. Like, this is not going to surprise anybody who operates in the sector, I don't think. And the way that we're trying to present this a bit here is a bit of sort of like what's most known on the left, and as we move to the right, it gets a little bit more, oh, that's interesting, or different, right? And so, grants and fundraising and partnerships are all, I would say, lock, stock, and barrel part of the trade, right? Some people do them well. Of course, there's places, to learn better. But in the middle, I think it gets a bit more interesting. Earned income. And we've got some examples there around social enterprise or fee for service. I mean, the terms sort of blend. We'll talk to different people, but impact investments and outcomes contracts. I mean, that's getting, I would say, more different for people, or harder to do, or there's
radical.
Yeah, maybe radical, yeah. But I mean, let's talk a bit about the earned income on the social enterprise. And so, one of the examples, we've been working a lot with Furniture Bank, and so here in Toronto, I think we've had 2 or 3 engagements. And if you don't know who they are, I mean, their basic service is, if you're moving or downsizing to a condo, or you're basically moving and you don't want to put your furniture to the curb, you give them a call, you pay a fee, and they come and remove your furniture. And guess what? The next day they turn around, and people who are transitioning out of homelessness and into a home get a furnished apartment. So you feel great about what you do. You get a tax receipt, and Furniture Bank earns money. It costs $200, $300, $400 to get rid of your furniture, but it drives their mission, right? So look, if that's radical for you, I mean, just take a deep breath for a second. Well, they should be doing it for free. No, they should, let's just take a deep breath. But when Furniture Bank started, their social enterprise, was a small portion of their business. They were largely grant funded, right?
Interesting.
And so Dan Kershaw, who's the ED there, is just speaking out. That has, over the last 6-7 years, it's reversed, right? So the social enterprise has grown dramatically. Corporate sponsorships with IKEA has grown dramatically, such that it's 80-20 the other way now, right? And so they've got a Furniture Bank network, but they have a business case with external revenue, people paying them for market activity that drives their social mission, right? And so they are a very good example of someone who understands what their mission is in the world and has found something that people are willing to pay for, right?
Yeah, no, it's and as you say, it's a great example because it's very, closely aligned, obviously, with what it is they're trying to do, and I think very much meets a need that's out there for people who know that they need to get rid of stuff, need to move on to move to a new set of furniture or whatever, but they don't want to be adding to the landfill. They don't want to be like
exactly. And just to bring this back to the other conversation, their measurement framework thing, that they talk about, an environmental mission as core to their activity. They talk about employing people with disabilities, not employing people with barriers, who actually drive the truck. There's so much alignment, and they've got excellent data about how the lives have changed, for furniture, right? So that's a nice one, and it took a long time to get there, right? It took a long time to get there. Jesse, maybe we'll go to the impact investing stuff, or
yeah. Is that good to go to this slide here?
Yeah. What I'm trying to show here, is, again, in the left-hand circle is the traditional philanthropic model where you're given money and it doesn't require that the government doesn't want anything except for the outcomes. You don't have to pay them back, right? On impact investing, well, hold on a second. We're going to change the nature of the game a bit. The investor gets a financial return, some interest. Now, again, if that's heresy for you, okay, then this is a difficult conversation. But I would say over the last 10 years, it's been more and more common to speak about, and I'll just throw social finance, impact investing. It's becoming more and more part of the conversation, right? And it's not for everybody, right? You have to have a very particular culture, you have to have a very particular risk appetite, and you have to have a very particular skill set to execute, right? But I think more and more, those organizations that can find that revenue stream that can give back a financial return, more options open up for them. The government has come out with their social finance fund. So I think it's 800 million over 10 years. Like, it's some significant dollars at play. And this isn't the space to talk about it, but that number,
the game for sure.
Tells you that the game is on, right? And they're looking to grow. If I don't say ecosystem, it's not a webinar, to grow the ecosystem.
Ecosystem framework, exactly. We're hitting them all. We're hitting a bingo sheet, right? No, but I think this is also a helpful way of presenting something that, as I said, can seem a little bit, I'm kind of joking, obviously, but can seem radical or can seem a bit outside of people's, understanding. And I'm wondering if you have some examples around where you've seen this work as well that you can share, just to show people how concretely, this can really be a huge success.
Yeah. Sure. I think the classic example, Jesse, and we'll get to the other example that we talked to before, is Windmill Micro Lending, right? So they are an organization that gives loans, I think, up to $15,000 to foreign trained professionals who need to get their licensure here in Canada, right? And so they lend them the money, and the loans are paid back with interest. And so they've been able to attract foundation dollars, where that foundation gives them their impact dollars, and there's a return back to the investor, right? So it's a very clear line because they're issuing loans and they're getting interest right back. Exactly. So it is
a very concrete model because and they're already sort of set up as a lender, right? In that sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of, on that first one, we have the capability, we have the risk appetite, we've got the management,
it's already there.
If you're a traditional, choose your industry and employment, or and you're doing more of that standard frontline service delivery, for resume building or job matching, it becomes a lot harder to see your way there. But there are ways forward. not in 6 months. It may take 36 months. But Windmill, I think, is a classic example of, they're built for that. The second example, actually, I just want to leave Windmill as the example.
Mm-hmm. And I just, there's one, I think we covered almost everything, but this is maybe the last slide, but I think we've been talking about this throughout the conversation. I don't know if there's anything more you want to add around this as well.
Well, it's a bit of a gut check. Maybe hit a couple more buttons. I think that some other things might pop up in there.
I'm not sure if I can do that with this technology at the moment, but anyway.
Oh no, just hit like next,
that's what I have currently as my.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, look, that's fine. I mean, look, this is a classic revenue on the left, purpose underneath, and you're trying to get to the upper right hand quadrant. You want to choose a revenue stream that really aligns, with your purpose, right? If it's low revenue, high purpose, it's not good. If it's low, and I always mix it up, but you know what I mean. You want to get that ideal mixture, right? So this is this example of, if I'm a disability serving organization. Yeah. Am I really building an app to sell in the Apple Store for concert tickets? Probably not, right? I can't compete. It's not in line with my purpose, right? So this is just a mental way to kind of cause the conversation. Are my activities in line with my purpose? And do I have a business model here or a revenue model? That this is the alignment piece.
And what's the sweet spot kind of thing?
And what's the sweet spot?
Yeah.
Because you might try a few things and it's just not good. And so one of the examples here is we work with Waterloo. Jesse, I didn't talk about this example before. They're an extended family disability.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I have a family connection with them. That's what I was
saying. Yeah. So they started a tool library, right? And so this was to lend tools that otherwise, people with disabilities, perhaps couldn't afford. And so it gives them an out to get out into the market to do camping or cooking or gardening, right? Because you don't want to go to spend all that money. So this was a very aligned business for them. Give people a way to integrate into community, right?
Yep.
The part that that they were musing is, this was a green play for them. Like they were going to divert, because they were doing a big rental and not purchasing, that they were saving. What's it called? Landfill, right? And so we had an interesting conversation and said, well, is that on mission or not really on mission, right? But and it caused a very interesting conversation, right?
Well, it's a deep question. These are deep questions, right? Around mission. What is your purpose as an organization, and how do you tie to that, right?
Yeah. Are they a greenhouse gas saving organization, or are they a community building organization? Right? Look, we're very more blunt, like do one thing well. Right?
Yeah.
Very hard. Okay, 2 things well, 3 things well. That's it. But
it's funny because you hear that message when you're building businesses as well as entrepreneurs. It's like you have to really focus on what you're good at, kind of thing.
We have this is you and I talking, you talking before about what are you great at, right? And what do you want to help people with?
Exactly.
So that was it. This is really around that if it was internal, external, aligned, this is the aligned part.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I know many years ago, my mom was on their board, and we used to have a family partnership with a few families, with extended families. So anyway, I have fond memories.
Their model is great. Their extended family is great. Waterloo. Hi, Al, if you're listening. If you're not, hi, everybody.
It's an amazing organization. Well, that's great. Well, this has been such I've already learned a ton in a relatively short time, and I must say I do feel less nervous about the whole concept. Not that I did before, but I just kind of I had more of an abstract understanding, let's say, rather than and this has really helped me in seeing some tangible examples of where this has been effective, and with organizations that I'm familiar with and work that's really important.
Yeah, there are many people who are doing it. It's not that weird. It takes some time and it takes some intentionality. Like, we like to see, just for what it's worth, revenue diversification, should show up in some strategic plan somewhere, like under finance, something like that, right? Because otherwise, you're just going on autopilot, and in firms like yours, Jesse, that can really, they have a good landscape of what government is, and can really be helpful to go deeper with one ministry, to go to other ministries, or to go from federal to to provincial to municipal. That's all, I think, a legitimate way to diversify revenue and hit those risk points.
Well, and you mentioned too that Lyft's been working with ESDC. I'll just take like 2 more minutes because I want to just hear about those partnerships as well, the ESDC, IRCC. And are those sort of focused on helping organizations within those sectors, or what's the?
Yeah. So they fund us too, and you can go to our website to see. IRCC is on. We chose last time we chose, I think, 10 immigrant serving organizations. Now I think we're at 8 or 9. I should know off the top of my head, and we work with them individually, but we also bring them together as we call them a cohort, right? So that they can learn from each other, because the problems I tell you in Victoria are the same problems in St. John, and there's a lot to share around peer-to-peer learning, right? And so, we take them through, a bit of an approach, what's your strategy? Make sure you've got a measurement framework. You've got a revenue diversification strategy, and can you market yourselves? I mean, that's the hallmark of the Lyft journey, at least as it is today. And we've done, I guess, 2 cohorts with immigration, and we did one with ESDC, and stay tuned for more.
Excellent. Oh, you heard it here first, folks. No, but it's really interesting, and it's interesting to see how. Even within your own model, you have. There's a role for government to play in terms of supporting some of this work, and helping organizations, be able to look outside of government for funding, right? Which I think is a really important piece as well.
Yeah, like government's not in the game. You said it, Justin. I know we're at 36 minutes, but they want their money well spent, right? And so the better that you can be around these things that we've talked about, measurement, whatever. The more chance that you're going to have to be a preferred vendor there, right? And not subject to those companies going. So, look, I think it's symbiotic in a way, but they're not getting out of the game, right? But they're under tremendous pressure too, coming out of COVID and
they're not getting out of the game, and they still, they're still a very significant force. But I think it's also, it's competitive. There's, nuances in terms of the way these things change, directions change, all of that stuff. So I think this in terms of the whole stability piece too, I think it's really powerful.
Yeah.
To have, to really have thought through alternative sources and diversified sources of revenue. I'm going to wrap us up. I think we could go on for a while, but thank you so much for being here. I knew this was going to be a really interesting conversation. I've learned a lot, and I hope others listening have as well. And if they want to know more about Lyft or about your work, is there somewhere they can go to find that out?
Yeah, our website. Our website would be great. I should know this off by heart.
I think it's in the corner of your
LiftPartners.ca. There you go. Look at that. You see how good we are?
Perfect. Yeah. So go to the website or follow them on social media.
Yeah, follow us on social. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And Gord, likewise.
Reach out anytime. We love having conversations with people about where they are,
Very cool. Very cool. Well, anyway, I'm excited to just sort of dip our toe into this and learning a little bit about it and looking forward to following you and learning more. And of course, anyone watching who's interested in the work that we're doing with our firm here and wants to know more about how to work with governments in all kinds of different ways and all kinds of different sectors, as social impact organizations, as charities and nonprofits, feel free to follow me here and to subscribe to our newsletter, which you can access through my LinkedIn or through our website as well, at janclark.com. But thanks again, Gord. And
thanks, Justin.
We'll see you, I'm sure, soon, one way or another.
Yeah, see you on the street. Yeah, it was a great conversation.
Exactly.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.